On the Japanese island of Amami Oshima, known for its pristine nature and unique wildlife, the night brought no peace. Instead, fear of a deadly threat loomed, a threat that had shaped the lives of the islanders for generations. The habu snakes, venomous creatures closely related to rattlesnakes and vipers, were not only notorious for their danger, but also for their frequent attacks. In 1980, over 400 people were bitten, and the snake's venom left a trail of pain and death. Providing medical care for the victims posed a significant challenge. Although the anti-serum that could save lives was available, it could not be stored in the remote mountainous regions, which often lacked electricity. In these areas where access to emergency care was difficult, every habu bite became a race against time. The government faced a nearly unsolvable problem. How could they protect people from this invisible threat? Conventional solutions, such as expanding power lines or developing new medical treatments, were either too expensive or required too much time. Quick action was needed, and so a bold plan was conceived: the introduction of a natural predator of the habu snake to the island. After intense deliberations, the choice fell on an animal renowned worldwide for its cleverness and resistance to snake venom: the mongoose. The decision was based on the unique biology of mongooses. Their acetylcholine receptors make them less susceptible to the venom of cobras, close relatives of the habu snakes. It seemed like the perfect solution. In 1979, 30 mongooses were brought to the island. These small but brave fighters were supposed to take on the battle against the habu snakes and finally bring safety to the local population. At first, everything seemed to go according to plan. The residents breathed a sigh of relief, hoping they could soon walk through their fields and forests without fear of snake bites. But nature had other plans. Within a few years, it became clear that the introduction of the mongooses did not have the desired effect. Instead, a new disaster unfolded. The main reason for the plan's failure lay in the fundamental differences between mongooses and habu snakes. Mongooses are diurnal animals, while habu snakes hunt exclusively at night. The two species lived in literally different worlds and rarely encountered each other. As a result, the hoped-for battles between mongooses and snakes rarely occurred. The mongooses, however, quickly found other prey that was easier to catch, including numerous native species that had previously had no natural predators. Particularly hard hit was the Amami rabbit, a living fossil found exclusively on Amami Oshima and a neighboring island. This unique animal, which had survived millions of years of evolution, suddenly became the preferred prey of the mongooses. The damage to the local fauna was devastating. The consequences of the mongoose invasion soon became impossible to ignore. The number of snake bites did not decrease, while the populations of numerous endemic species declined rapidly. Birds, small mammals, and other animals unique to the island fell victim to the uninvited guests. The island, once known for its rich biodiversity, was on the brink of an ecological catastrophe. By 1993, the situation had become so dire that the Japanese Ministry of the Environment sounded the alarm. But by then, the mongoose population on Amami Oshima was already out of control. A small group of 30 animals had multiplied into thousands within a few decades. The authorities faced a new challenge. How could they stop this invasive species before it irreversibly destroyed the island's ecology? Thus began a new battle, this time not against the snakes, but against the mongooses themselves. The mongooses, once hailed as saviors, had turned into unstoppable invaders. The residents of Amami Oshima had to watch helplessly as the small predators destroyed their environment. The unique animals and plants of the island, which had evolved over millennia of isolated evolution, were unprepared for the arrival of such an efficient hunter. While the Amami rabbit, rare birds, and other native species were drastically reduced, the mongoose population continued to grow. In 2000, the Japanese authorities realized they had to act. A plan was developed to control the mongoose population, and thus began a battle that would last nearly a quarter of a century: the War Against the Mongooses. A specially trained team, the Amami mongoose hunters, was established. Their task was to find, capture, and save the island from ecological disaster. The hunt became a large-scale operation reminiscent of a military campaign. Initially, the hunters relied on simple methods, setting traps along roads and in forests. But the mongooses proved to be extremely clever and adaptable. Many animals escaped the traps, and the population barely declined. It became clear that more sophisticated strategies were needed. By now, the residents of Amami Oshima had learned to live with the threat. The fight against the mongooses became a symbol of the islanders' resilience and ingenuity. But the question remained, would they succeed in defeating the mongooses once and for all? Or would the island continue to suffer under the burden of this invasive species? The answer lay in the future, but hope persisted. The years passed, and the battle against the mongooses on Amami Oshima remained a grueling but relentless process. By 2020, the years of effort began to show encouraging results. The mongoose population had noticeably declined. However, this achievement brought new challenges, as the island's ecosystem recovered only slowly, and many native species remained endangered. The question of how to ensure the long-term preservation of biodiversity became the focus of efforts. A central factor in the success was the collaboration between scientists, environmental organizations, and the local population. The authorities realized that technical solutions alone were not enough. Instead, the knowledge of the islanders about their natural environment had to be integrated into the strategies. Programs were launched to involve locals in ecosystem research and encourage them to become conservationists themselves. A remarkable example was the protection of the Amami rabbit. This living fossil, which had survived on the island for millions of years, became a symbol of resistance against the invasive threat of the mongooses. Scientists developed special protected areas where the rabbits were safe from predators. These areas were actively supported by the community, which helped monitor traps and restore the animal's habitat. At the same time, efforts to control the mongooses were intensified. New technologies such as GPS trackers and drones were introduced to better understand the movements of the animals. These innovations helped implement targeted measures and ensure that no mongooses went unnoticed. The combination of traditional knowledge and modern technology proved crucial in achieving the goal of a mongoose-free island. However, not all challenges were purely biological. The fight against the mongooses also became a political issue. Critics argued that the high costs of the operation were not justified and questioned whether restoring the ecosystem was even possible. Supporters, on the other hand, emphasized that saving the unique wildlife of Amami Oshima was not only a moral obligation, but also brought long-term economic benefits, such as through ecotourism. A turning point came in 2024. After years of intense hunting and research, the Japanese government announced that the mongooses on Amami Oshima had been officially eradicated. This news was celebrated as a triumph of human perseverance and marked the first successful case of eradicating an invasive species on a large island. However, the joy was tempered by the fact that the island's ecosystems continued to suffer from the long-term effects of the mongoose invasion. Despite the victory over the mongooses, there was no room for complacency. The islanders had to remain vigilant to prevent the animals from being reintroduced. At the same time, they faced the challenge of restoring the ecological balance of their homeland. This task required patience, dedication, and continuous investment in conservation. The ecology of Amami Oshima began to recover slowly. The population of the Amami rabbit increased, and some rare bird species returned to their native habitats. Nevertheless, it was clear that the recovery of the ecosystem would take decades. The lessons learned on Amami Oshima, however, were invaluable and served as a model for other regions struggling with invasive species. One of the most important outcomes of the mongoose eradication was the development of new methods and technologies that were now applied worldwide. Researchers and conservationists used the experiences from Amami Oshima to develop innovative strategies for combating invasive species. From the forests of Hawaii to the wetlands of Australia, the lessons from this small Japanese archipelago found global application. Amami Oshima was more than just the stage for an ecological war. The island became a symbol of the possibilities and challenges of conservation in the 21st century. The success in eliminating the mongooses showed that human perseverance and innovation could solve even the most difficult environmental problems. Yet the story also served as a reminder of how careless decisions could have catastrophic consequences, a lesson humanity must not forget. The successful eradication of the mongooses on Amami Oshima marked a historic milestone. However, the aftermath of the ecological war continued to shape life on the island. The endemic species once threatened by the small predators showed signs of recovery, but nature remained fragile and required constant care to remain stable in the long term. The Amami rabbit, the living fossil of the island, became a symbol of hope. Its population grew slowly but steadily, thanks to the newly created protected areas and the dedicated work of scientists and residents. Families and school groups participated in reforestation projects to restore habitat for the rabbits and other species. The sighting of an Amami rabbit became a cause for celebration and a sign that the island was healing. Another success was the return of rare birds whose songs had been silent for decades. The local bird population, which had suffered under the mongoose plague, began to recover. Bird sanctuaries were established, and ornithological studies provided valuable insights into the adaptability of the species. Eco-tourists, drawn by the unique flora and fauna, began visiting the island, boosting the local economy and raising awareness about conservation. Yet despite these successes, the past served as a warning. The government of Amami Oshima implemented precautions to ensure that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Strict controls were introduced at the island's ports to prevent the reintroduction of invasive species. Particular attention was paid to preventing the return of mongooses. Scientists developed early warning systems to detect even the smallest signs of an invasive population. The experiences of Amami Oshima became a textbook example of conservation and ecological restoration. At international conferences, Japanese researchers shared their findings, inspiring other countries to confront the challenges of invasive species. In regions like Hawaii, where mongooses remained a threat, the techniques and strategies developed on Amami Oshima were applied. This was proof that positive outcomes could emerge from mistakes. For the residents of the island, the story of the mongoose invasion became a symbol of their resilience and determination. Many remembered the times when they could not even leave their homes for fear of snakes or mongooses. Now they could take pride in having found a way to save their homeland. The children who grew up with stories of the mongoose hunters were now adults, carrying the responsibility of preserving their island's nature for future generations. The lessons of Amami Oshima extended beyond the island. They served as a reminder of how fragile the balance of nature is and how significant the impact of even small decisions can be. The careless import of the mongooses, once seen as a simple solution, had consequences that lasted decades. Yet the story also showed how perseverance and innovation could overcome seemingly insurmountable problems. The future of Amami Oshima remains uncertain, but it is full of hope. The islanders know that their work is far from over. Protecting their unique ecosystems requires constant attention, collaboration, and dedication. But they also know that they have overcome an incredible challenge together and are ready for the tasks ahead. Amami Oshima stands today as a shining example of the power of community and the will to do what is right, even when the circumstances seem discouraging. The island, once plagued by snakes and mongooses, has regained its voice. In the songs of its birds, the rustling of its forests, and the safe hopping of its rabbits. It is a voice that reminds the world that nature, however fragile, has an incredible capacity for renewal, if we only give it the chance.